Oh, the Billy Carson situation. So, you may know what's happening with Billy Carson lately at the moment. He is a very popular, he is a very successful, very rich individual who's a leader for many people who enjoy the metaphysical space. And recently he got into some hot water in terms of his reputation because some claims that he had regarding the crucifixion and the texts he had to justify that belief he has around the crucifixion were proven to be incorrect or proven to be fraudulent or not credible, right? So his reputation took a bit of a hit. Now, I need to preface this by saying I haven't read any of Billy's books. I haven't tuned into his show or his shows. I've seen him on various podcasts though, and I've known about him for a while in the space. I'll also let you know that this isn't going to be a video of me bashing Billy or bashing Wes Huff, who he had the debate with, or trying to rile people up. That's not what this is about. This video is an analysis based on what I believe due to the hermetic laws of the universe. I think I know why, on a universal law level, this happened to Billy, and hopefully you can learn from this situation. It's also important for me to preface this by saying what I actually believe. So, one, I believe in the hermetic laws of the universe. Now, some scholars would do everything to discredit that, but I think the hermetic laws do have scientific backing behind them, and some of the greatest minds in history, including Einstein, Tesla, Carl Jung, and more, were what you call pantheists. They believed the all is mind, which is the governing principle of Hermeticism. I also believe in many teachings of the Bible, but I do think that the Bible is a coded book. Things are not said directly, and many things are up to interpretation. And this is why many heinous things have been carried out in the name of God, in the name of the Bible, because it's up to interpretation. I believe that most religious texts actually have value, and it's important to get like a wider grasp on how different cultures and people view existence, view creation from a religious view. So let's break this down. Firstly, I'll say I did watch the entire debate, and it wasn't as crazy as people are making it seem, okay? There was basically 2 points that Billy kind of rescinded on, and the rest of it, funnily enough, was the moderator asking Wes Huff questions that he kind of had a difficult time answering in relation to certain things in the Old Testament, and then interpretations, and, you know, if God is so omnipresent and ever knowing, that why would he code these things, etc. So it was actually some good questions asked by the moderator. But there are 2 things that Billy basically conceded on. One being the crucifixion of Jesus. So he used the Sinai Bible and the Gospel of Barnabas and some text around Jesus's wife to justify Jesus not being crucified. And we came to find through Wes that the Sinai Bible, or Codex Sinaiticus, does talk about the crucifixion, that the Gospel of Barnabas is a fraudulent document made in the 14th or 15th century, which is basically a copy of Dante's Inferno. Dante Alighieri wrote the Inferno, and the Gospel of Barnabas is only in Italian and Spanish, so that makes sense because Dante Alighieri is Italian. The Gospel of Jesus' Wife, I believe it was called, is proven to be fraudulent. So that kind of cut out Billy's argument in terms of Jesus not being crucified. The second thing was the story of Genesis. Billy said that the Enuma Elish lays out the story of Genesis, and that Genesis copied the Enuma Elish word for word. The Enuma Elish is a Babylonian myth regarding creation, and Wes was very smart in what he asked Billy. He said, in Genesis 1 and 2, how does this compare to the Enuma Elish? And it wasn't quite comparable, right? So that's where Billy lost some credibility. Other than that, though, it wasn't all that crazy. A lot of it's sensationalism. It wasn't that crazy. So let's get into the analysis of what happened and why. Firstly, you need to know the hermetic laws. So the first is all is mind. Everything begins with the mind, and hermetic law believes that we live in the mind of the creator and that we have the creator energy within us. We are all just physical expressions of the creator of the mind. Secondly, you have the law of correspondence, which basically means as above, so below, as within, so without. Anything on the physical plane is reflected in the mental, is reflected in the spiritual. So anything that's happening in your reality, in your real world, is due to your mind and your spirit, okay? Correspondence. And the Bible also says what you bind on earth, you will bind in heaven. So similar concept. Next is the law of vibration. Nothing is still, everything moves. Vibration over a prolonged period of time creates a frequency. Your frequency is what allows your reality to occur. Now, prayer is a form of vibration. Your mind, when you think about things, vibrates at a certain way, and a prolonged vibration will create a frequency. When you pray, it is a form of meditation. It is a form of mental vibration that connects you to a certain reality, and that is what prayer is, connecting to a frequency and it importing into your life. Next, the fourth law of the Hermetic universe is polarity. So everything has its light and dark, everything has hot and cold. There are opposites in the universe. But what you have to understand is that at the furthest spectrums of the opposites, they are the same. So what do I mean by this? If a room is completely 100% dark, you can't see inside of it. And if a room is 100% light, you also can't see in it. So the furthest spectrums actually end up being the same thing. And these polarized energies are just on a spectrum. Okay? Polarity, very important. Rhythm is the next law, fifth law. Basically, you breathe in, you breathe out. The tides go in, the tides go out. We have night and day in a rhythmic fashion. Rhythm is one of the laws of the universe. Causation is the sixth law, and everything has its cause, everything has its effect. Nothing happens randomly in the universe. Everything can be boiled down to a cause, all the way back from the beginning state of the universe, all the way back to the first spark of creation. All causation, everything has a cause, nothing is random. And finally, the seventh Hermetic law is gender. And this has to do with masculine and feminine energy. So it doesn't have to do with men and women. It has to do with an energy. Masculine energy is the energy of projection and giving. Feminine energy is the energy of receiving. That's what you gotta know about that. So we need to understand how Billy got into this position of influence, power, and wealth. And this is due to the Hermetic laws. Let's start with all is mind. Everything is mental. Everything begins in the mind. So Billy had the idea of writing books, the idea of having a podcast, the idea of building this brand, the idea of going to these different archaeological sites and all that type of stuff. It began in his mind. Then we can move to vibration and frequency. So basically, how you have a potent frequency and a frequency that draws a reality, a certain type of reality into your life, is through emotionally charged belief, emotionally charged conviction. So Billy had a lot of conviction in the things he spoke about, a lot of conviction in his goals, a lot of conviction in what he was spreading into the world, a lot of conviction in terms of what he built for his life. And that is what allowed it to occur. That's why in the Bible it says, pray as if you already have what you're praying for. It's talking about conviction. Understand and know that what you are doing is happening, is going to happen, right? So conviction allowed him to tap into a frequency that allowed him to create the reality he created. Now, what's very important in this situation is the concept of polarity, all right? The law of polarity. Billy Carson is a very polarizing individual, and that is why he is famous. You have to understand, you need polarity to create magnetism. If you know anything about magnetism, it requires polarity. Okay, so when you are a polarizing individual, people will be magnetized to you. People will be attracted to you. Some people will love you. Some people will hate you. Some people will be on your side. Some people will be your enemies. When you are polarized, right? In Billy's situation, he created a polarizing narrative around Christian people. So he basically aimed to debunk a lot of things that Christians believed. The crucifixion of Jesus, the presence of God. You know, he said things like, I haven't seen the devil kill anybody in the Bible. I've seen a lot of people, millions of people die in the Bible due to God, right? He said a lot of polarizing statements that bothered Christian people. So due to that, there are some people who resonate with that and were attracted to him. And other people who are like, this guy's the Antichrist, get him out of here, right? That's why he's magnetic. Now, rhythm is very important, and what Billy is dealing with in this situation is due to rhythm, but I'll talk about that later. Causation as well, cause and effect. When I explain rhythm and how this happened to him, I'll talk about cause and effect as well. Gender, though, is very important. Billy has books out. He's got how much podcast episodes. He has how much videos over the internet. He has how much stuff on Instagram. He has how much writing. He has how much other people's podcasts he's been on. For years, tons and tons and tons and tons of masculine projection into the world. He has given a lot to the world. Tons of stuff. This is how you build up a brand, build up a following. Polarity mixed with giving things. Polarity mixed with putting a message into the world. And he's put out a lot of messaging. That's why he's so famous. That's why he's so rich. So that's how Billy got to where he is. Now, in this situation, here's what I think happened on a Hermetic universal law level. Billy is dealing with a swing of rhythm right now. So I need to explain something to you guys called heuristic escalation. Now, polarity, if you want to get attention, is a good thing, right? You say some polarizing things, you will get attention. We have seen this with multiple people. You say polarizing stuff like Billy Carson, you can get famous. Donald Trump, you can get famous. Andrew Tate, you can get famous. You say polarizing things. Now, what happens when you take the polarization too far? You push it just so far. What happens is the cosmic pendulum aims to swing you to the other side of that and get you into a centered state eventually. So I think in Billy's situation, he was dealing with a pride vector, a highly charged pride vector. What do I mean by this? It's something I call hermetic narcissism. Now, it's not narcissism in like pop narcissism where everybody's ex is a narcissist and, you know, all these girls are complaining about narcissist. It's not that. It's when you fall too much into pride, you think you're owed things. You think you're very grandiose, right? Because he said that he is the foremost expert in the world on the Bible, on ancient texts, on scrolls, cylinders, papyrus. He said he's the foremost expert in the world about this. So what happens? Now you end up in a conversation with somebody who knows more than you about these particular things. And you end up in a humbled state. Because that's what the universe is trying to do. It's trying to move you from a very polarized pride vector into a more humble state. So understand this. The Bible says, pride cometh before the fall and a haughty spirit before defeat. Right? So if you are too proud, you will be made humble. Now, this is not to say Billy hasn't done good things for people. I've heard fantastic things that Billy's done for people, donated things to people, helped a lot of people. It's not to say that he hasn't done good things, but there is a pride vector there. And that's why he's been humbled on a universal law level.
I feel like there's that, it's like this was his moment of like an ego death or something for him to elevate beyond where he is. Because if you even look at his story, it's very emotionally charged for him, and it's very like a prideful thing because it's connected to his childhood. Like he shared, and don't quote me exactly, but he shared basically that when he was younger, his dad used to have him study the Bible and literally like pen and paper and go through the Bible and study it. So there's where that pride comes in. Like, I've been doing this for so long, you know, like it may have been like trauma, but then he kind of turned that into purpose. And then, you know, his mom was also very adamant about him knowing certain prayers and stuff. So I feel like that's where the childhood emotionally charged thing comes in, where now he's being forced to face certain things and know that there's still much for him to learn too.
It's true. Yeah. So the fact that he did that as a child may give him a charged state towards the Bible, may give him a charged state towards Christianity. You know, so then you make an enemy of the religion of Christianity due to that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Because a lot of times they say like people have these like big reactions that don't seem like they make sense because there's more to it, and that more to it is normally like some childhood wound or childhood thing that, you know, he's obviously shifted the perspective of, because look at his life.
Makes sense.
You know?
That is true. So Billy is dealing with a concept called heuristic escalation. And that's basically when you become so polarized that the universe, God, the all, swings you to the other side, right? In an attempt to center you up, get you more centered and straight and narrow, more measured in mind. And this hasn't only happened to Billy. This happened to Donald Trump. The assassination attempt on Donald Trump, if his head had just moved just fractions of an inch, he would be gone. But that attempt on his life, due to him being such a polarizing individual, was designed divinely to add some humility to him. Now, when you look at the word humble, it's not the greatest word, to be honest. It kind of means to lessen yourself. It's like, who wants to do that? And I thought to myself, because when I was in grade 11, I took world religion class, and it was probably one of the best classes I ever took. It gave me a great perspective on other people in the world. It gave me a great perspective on other people's cultures and religions and stuff like that. And the teacher who taught me this world religions class, he had studied to be a priest for 8 years. So he knew his stuff. He knew his Bible. He knew his stuff. And I asked him, I said, sir, why is it that God needs us to worship him? And he said, Seth, God doesn't need you to worship him. We just worship God out of thankfulness and gratitude for what God has given us. Life, love, abundance, etc. I said, okay, all right. I just still have a problem with this whole worship thing. I don't get it. Why would some cosmic, divine, omnipresent entity, talk about worship so much in this book that's supposed to be his book, right? And then I learned about the Hermetic laws, and then it made sense to me. The reason why there is the worship element within the Bible is to remind people of humility, because there is always going to be someone, something, an energy that is beyond you, okay? God knows more than you. God can do things that you cannot do. There's going to be somebody further along the path. That's what happened to Billy, right? He ran into somebody who knew more about these particular texts, but he said he was the foremost expert in the world on these things. So you got put in a humbling situation. And that's where the worship element comes from, because if you worship something, that means it's greater than you, right? Better than you, etc. I think it's designed to remind people to have a level of humility. That doesn't mean that you crush yourself, but you understand that there is a divine creator, there's divine power in this world that you can't do, right? Well, you can create reality in your way, because you do have the power of God within you, but it's not the same. God could just be instantaneously, there's a Rolex. Can you do that? If you can do that, please message me. Please message me, because we'll make a lot of money. The whole thing that is trying to happen right now is a concept that is within the Bible and is also within Buddhism. The straight and narrow. So in Matthew, it says, straight is the path and narrow is the way that lead unto life, and few there be that find it. So you want to be centered in mind. The straight and narrow is a reference to not being a polarized individual. The masses are polarized, swung up and down. You must have a middle way, a disciplined mind, a straight and narrow mind. In Buddhism, the Buddha, his first teaching after being enlightened is the middle way. That's what you have to do. You can't get too proud. You can't get too humble. You can't get too altruistic. You can't get too greedy. You must walk a middle path. The problem with that is that it's not sensational and doesn't attract attention. So you need some polarity. So if you look at a lot of the Christian creators and stuff like that, they are relishing over this happening to Billy. Relishing. They are all united in attacking this man right now. They are relishing in it. And they're using very polarized titles in their stuff, like Billy Carson destroyed, Billy Carson annihilated, Billy Carson this, that, and this, just tearing them apart, because they couldn't wait for it to happen. And this is what happens when you're super polarizing and create enemies. You understand? They can't wait for you to fall.
But that's not really Christian of them, or crusading of sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. In Christianity, what they're supposed to do is pray for Billy. They're not supposed to attack him, but attacking him is sensationalism, because they understand polarity. They understand that this is going to get attention, right? Now, you could say I'm doing the same thing, but I understand polarity. I understand it will get attention, right? So, but I'm not trying to attack anybody. I'm just trying to analyze this situation using the laws of the universe so you can learn something.
And learn from others' mistakes.
So it's very interesting because it's very tricky. Like I said, the Bible is up to interpretation. So there are things in the Bible that can be interpreted for them to attack Billy, and there are things in the Bible that can be interpreted for them to pray for him and acknowledge him. And he's suing Wes, and he's suing the people who set up this podcast. But the Bible says turn the other cheek. But then on the same hand, the Bible will say to crush your enemies. You understand? So what do you believe? This is where it gets tricky. And this is where a lot of people cherry pick things and utilize scripture for their own purposes. And this is not a conversation about that. Like I said, I believe the Bible is full of great teachings and full of good stuff. But there's also some odd things in the Bible that's like, why is that there? You know? So, for instance, I got to pull up a scripture, right? Because they're attacking Billy. But it says in Matthew 7:1-3, it says, "Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." Why are they judging him? But then in the same book of the Bible, a couple chapters later, it says, so in Matthew 18, it says, "If your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. But if they will not listen, take one or two others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If they still refuse to listen, tell it to the church. And if they refuse to listen even to the church, treat them as you would a pagan or tax collector." And in those times, pagans and tax collectors were treated very badly. So in one hand, it says, don't judge others, leave them alone, right? Whatever you judge people with will be measured unto you. And then a couple chapters later, it says, listen, if somebody's done something bad, talk to them one-on-one. If they don't listen to you, bring some more people to convince them. If that doesn't convince them, bring the church. And if the church doesn't work, destroy them. Treat them terribly. Which one do you do? Which one do you believe? Which one do you execute? You understand how this can be problematic. But I think, honestly, that all the Christian creators should be praying for Billy. If that's, your religion. If that's a religion, right? So I think ultimately that this situation teaches us a lot. It teaches you a lot about the concept of polarity. It teaches you a lot about the concept of rhythm. It also teaches you about frequency and having potent emotion, allowing you to change your reality. And what you got to understand about potent conviction and potent belief is that it does change reality. We have 8 billion people on the planet in 8 billion different realities. And I always use this comparison. People who believe the earth is flat and people who believe the earth is round, they live in 2 different realities. We all live on the same planet. People who are flat earthers have incredible emotional conviction and belief. And it doesn't matter, what the facts here say, versus people who believe the earth is round. It doesn't matter what the facts here say, because they have incredible conviction and belief on both ends. I don't care which one you are. I'm just using this as an example to demonstrate conviction and belief and how that changes your reality. Right? Now, some people will listen to me and say that's delusional, but do you not see? Have you ever tried to convince somebody of these things? They're not listening to you and you think they're delusional. Well, that's just how people are. That's just how reality is formed. So the conviction that Billy had allowed him to build a phenomenal brand. You can learn from that. The amount of content that Billy put out, the amount of just podcasts and books and all that stuff for years, you can learn from that.
The amount of research he did by himself, like actually traveling to those places. A lot of us just read the perspectives of others and take it as fact.
Yes, very true. The Bible says, seek and ye shall find, right? So look it up yourself. Don't take my word for it. I'm a pantheist. I believe in the Hermetic laws. I also believe in many teachings of the Bible. But if you don't believe me, just go look up the things I'm talking about and see if it makes sense to you. I'm not telling you to just only take my word for it. The thing is, people don't have time for this. So we trust authority because we can't read every book in the world. And we trust that the authorities have truthful things to tell us. So there's one more thing I want to talk about, which is something I've talked about before, which is basically like the emotional scale of consciousness, similar to David R. Hawkins' scale of consciousness. And I have a video about this. What happened when Billy got challenged on that podcast is I think he fell into a state of fear. And he was worried that, like, oh man, these people have discredited me. It's going to affect my brand. It's going to affect my reputation. And when you get into a state of fear, you get into a state of survival. So you saw his reaction, what he did, suing people, saying not the greatest things to his community, apologizing, etc. This is due to fear. And when you're in fear, you're in survival mode. Survival mode is an entirely polarized state. You will do things that you normally would not do. You would do things that a measured mind would normally not do. So I think Billy was just in a state of fear, right? On a hermetic level. And that caused polarities and swings. And, it's very hard to deal with when you're an authority in a space. Sometimes it's really difficult to just say, hey, I was wrong about that. Doesn't mean that everything else you said is incorrect, right? Because he did present some evidence on that debate that West didn't really have anything to say against, like some certain things in relation to the Dogon tribe and stuff like that. So it doesn't mean everything he said is wrong, but sometimes it's just to be like, well, now I have new information. I was incorrect about this. And that's just like a way better approach than to dig your heels in the sand and say, I'm right. This is what the archaeological community does with someone like Grant Hancock. Grant Hancock finds this evidence that things that they thought were a certain age are way older, and he's disproving a lot of their stuff. And they're digging their heels in the sand, calling him crazy, calling him a liar, calling him all this stuff, instead of being like, well, what we once knew of ancient civilizations is no longer correct. Maybe I should go help Graham Hancock do some research so I can learn more of the truth. Right? So, but I think Billy did what he did out of fear. And everyone can relate to that. Everyone can relate to being afraid. So I think at the end of the day, this is a lesson on polarity. It's a lesson on rhythm. It's a lesson on humility and the cosmic pendulum. It's also a lesson for Christians to pray for somebody who was your enemy. Pray for somebody who's had their reputation tarnished. Pray for this person, because that's what the religion says you should do. And with that being said, that's that. I'm running a barrier breaker workshop on the 21st. Link is in the description below for that. Link is in the description for the next realm if you want to make some money using the hermetic laws of the universe. And that's that. If you enjoyed this type of format, if you enjoyed these analysis, let me know. If you want me to analyze anything else through the hermetic laws, let me know. From me and wifey, peace.